You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're super excited to talk to this guy, a guy that I met, about 18 years ago when he was first introduced as the head coach over at LSU back in June of 2006. 18 years ago, like we said, amazing run there at LSU where he was a two-time SEC Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, 6 SEC tournament titles, 2 championship game appearances, a national championship in 2009. Coach Paul Mainieri joins us now. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. It's good to catch up with you.
Absolutely. Let's start here, Coach. I just walked your amazing career, obviously all those years at Notre Dame and so many years of great coaching, and you walked off into the sunset. You retired. It was over. What made you want to get back into this thing?
Well, I didn't really want to leave in the first place. I unfortunately was dealing with some medical issues, specifically my neck, and I was in constant pain, and it was just draining my energy. And I just felt that the fair thing to do for LSU was, to resign and actually retire because I just didn't feel like I could do my job as well as I had expected to do it. But what has happened, Chris, for me is I felt much better over the course of these last 3 years. And I think those medical issues are behind me. I'm still a young man, only 66 years old. And, I thought if the right situation popped up, I'd want to get back in it. I had a couple of opportunities at other schools in the last couple of years, but I just wasn't feeling quite right, or it wasn't the right situation. But when Ray Tanner called me, a man that I have such great respect for, he was a tremendous baseball coach, and now he's the athletic director. I mean, what coach in his right mind wouldn't want to work for another great coach that knows what it takes to be successful and will give you the tools to be successful, besides being a friend of mine. So Ray Tanner was the one that dragged me out of retirement and put me back to work.
It's funny, Coach. I got to cover the Houston Astros a little bit, and Dusty Baker, had an amazing run with the Astros in recent years, and he was out of baseball for a little bit. And a lot of times it feels like when you take some time away, spend some time with your family like you did, spend some time with the grandkids, it kind of rejuvenates you. Is that what kind of doing stuff like that? Is that what kind of said, okay, look, I'm ready to come back to baseball with energy and kind of this fresh perspective?
Chris, there's no doubt about it. You hit the nail right on the head. When I went in to see the athletic director at LSU to tell him, that I just couldn't go on the way that I was feeling, I almost thought about asking him for a year's sabbatical leave like teachers do. But I knew that wouldn't fly, and the next year was going to be important, and they needed to hire a new coach. And so I never really presented it to him. But in a sense, this is what has happened to me. I took 3 years off, recharged the batteries. I'm honestly, I feel like I'm 40 years old again. I just have so much energy and love of the job. I was worried that maybe after 3 years, maybe I forgot, how much energy and how much dedication it takes to do this job. But it's like riding a bicycle. I just sat down in the chair, and I forgot I was off for 3 years, but I'm still recharged and ready to go.
Let's talk about the situation, because it'd be one thing if you jump back in the game and, went to Air Force and had to rebuild there. You're going to a big-time program, a championship pedigree program in South Carolina, and like you mentioned, your relationship with Ray Tanner. Still a lot of talent on that roster, and looking at it, it's the SEC, Coach. You know it. You got to hit the ground running here. You don't get 3-4 years to settle in here. So what did you like about the situation, and what do you like about where this program is right here?
Well, you're right about that too, Chris. There's some good players on this roster. Ethan Petry hit 20-something home runs last year. He just homered last night in the Cape League in his first game playing up there. We've got some good players. We need to supplement what we have in order to compete for a championship, and we're doing that this summer. So in the 2 weeks that I've been on the job, my 2 assistant coaches, Monty and Terry Rooney, have scoured the country. We're finding some kids we've added to the roster. We're going to continue to do that. And I don't have any doubt that we're going to have a very competitive team next spring. I wasn't interested in coming back if I had to have a rebuild year. I just didn't want to go through that at this point in my life. I don't feel like we're going to have to do that. I think that the season wasn't that bad last year. Mark Kingston was the head coach. He won 37 games. He won 3 games in the SEC tournament and 1 game in the regional. So it's not like the program is in dire straits. I think Mark left it in really good shape. And I'm hoping that we can build upon that and hopefully, get us back into, winning a regional, getting to a super regional, winning a super regional, and getting to Omaha.
Yeah, my next question was going to be about your staff. And you mentioned, retaining Monty Lee, who knows that area very, very well. Terry Rooney, who was with you at Notre Dame, was with you at LSU, was actually back at LSU last year helping with their recruiting. And we know how great of a recruiter he is. And then, of course, you're close friends with Jim Hendry, longtime MLB executive, and his son John spent the last 3 seasons at Virginia doing a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. So, just on the surface, Coach, looks like a tremendous staff you've assembled.
Oh, I'm so excited about it, Chris. Of course, Terry Rooney and I go back a long ways. He was my national search result to find a replacement for Brian O'Connor when Brian moved on from Notre Dame after 9 years as the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator to be the head coach at Virginia. Terry did a great job for 3 years that we were at Notre Dame together. And then when I took the job at LSU, he came with me. And he did a phenomenal job at LSU. Our first year was a struggle. There was no transfer portal in those days. So you just played with the roster that was left for you from the previous staff. And we struggled through the year a little bit. But in the meantime, Terry was out there putting together a number 1 ranked recruiting class that was very instrumental. And that the first year they arrived on campus, my second year, we went to Omaha, and then the following year we won the national championship. So Terry's just phenomenal, and I have all the confidence in the world of not only as a recruiter, but as a pitching coach. And then Monty Lee was so key to keep in the program. Wonderful human being, a great coach. He knows South Carolina inside and out. The players really feel strongly about him, and I'm sure by him staying, any player that was considering leaving the program rethought that plan and ended up staying. And so that was really critical. And then Johnny Hendry is going to be a superstar in coaching. He's been working the last 3 years for Brian O'Connor at Virginia, and he's been doing a tremendous job there. And as a third assistant, he brings different qualities to our coaching staff, being as young as he is. The other 3 of us aren't all that aren't spring chickens, if you know what I mean. I'm certainly the oldest, but Terry and Monty are in their 40s. Johnny brings a kind of a youthful perspective to our staff.
We're talking with South Carolina baseball head coach Paul Mainieri. And Coach, I know you were only out a couple of years, but man, in that time, the landscape of college baseball and college sports has kind of changed a little bit. NIL has become a way bigger deal. Looks like we're going to be approaching, sharing revenue with student athletes down the road. The transfer portal is a much bigger deal now. How do you tackle all these massive changes that are happening as a college coach?
Well, again, you're right, Chris. There's been a lot of changes. And, as I was sitting back on 3 years out of the game and watching a lot of this, I wasn't really sure I liked it, the changes that had happened. And then I started to change my attitude a little bit about it. And one of the reasons was because I went to do the Florida State at Virginia series for the ACC network last year. And when I was staying with Brian O'Connor and having dinner, I was saying, Brian, you have 10 transfers on your team. What's that like? And Brian's response to me was, Paul, it's been great. These kids are so appreciative of the opportunity. They've got experience. They've been leaders on the team, and they've just been a great addition to the program. And that kind of made me take a step back because I didn't really expect to have that kind of an answer. So my attitude has been kind of refreshed about that. And then also, I kind of took it as a challenge, like with all this NIL and transfer portal stuff. I wonder if I could handle it. And I wonder if I can get the job done in this new era of college athletics. And so I took it as kind of a challenge, and I'm happy to be here. And now I get to meet this challenge head on.
Yeah, and it looks like you guys are already hitting the ground running there. I've seen the last week or so, you guys have already been adding some big-time transfers from around the area. I saw some left-handed pitchers coming in as well. So, you really do have to dive head first back into this thing, but it looks like, man, you guys are already in the works with bringing some transfers in.
Well, it is just the way it's the way it's going to be now. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's not going backwards. This is the real world. I don't feel like I'm poaching players from other schools. These players have gone into the transfer portal on their own. No, I haven't encouraged anybody to do that. So once they're out there, I guess it's just the way of business as usual now. I was concerned about the transfer portal because I didn't want anybody accusing me that I was underhandedly going behind somebody's back and trying to encourage a kid into the transfer portal. And I don't know if that's being done by other coaches. It's certainly not being done by us. So I have a very clear conscience about getting a transfer player that's in the transfer portal already.
Talking with Coach Paul Mainieri. Coach, I know you know Coach Jim Schlossnagle very well. Played him several times this time at TCU, this college classics in Houston. I guess, he leaves an amazing program in A&M to go over to Texas, which has been a storied program for many years. They're coming into the SEC now with Oklahoma. I mean, to me, this just makes this conference, it was already the toughest conference in baseball, but top to bottom now, adding a Texas and an Oklahoma, I mean, just opens this thing up even more.
Well, a lot of people have mentioned that to me, and they say, wow, it made the conference tougher. And I said, well, how can it make the conference tougher?
Right.
So you're going to play Texas instead of Florida, or you're going to play Oklahoma instead of Mississippi State? I mean, everybody's so good, Chris. It doesn't matter what the name is on the front of the jersey. You know that those 30 conference games are going to be dogfights. It's going to be a grind to work your way through that. Everybody's going to win 10 games and everybody's going to lose 10 games. It's what you do in the other 10 games that are going to determine where you finish in the standings and what your postseason aspirations are going to be. So, I welcome the competition. I wish we were able to play everybody in the league, but unfortunately you don't play 5 teams in the conference because you can only play 10 of the teams. And, so whoever they tell us to play, we're going to show up and play them.
Yeah, and you guys will have it'll be 10, 3-game series. You'll have your 2 permanents, but the East and West are gone. So now it's not like the East was any easier or the West was any easier. They're both brutally tough. So it's just, you got to play everybody. I'm curious, how many texts did you get from some of the big name coaches in this league, like Mike Bianco and Dave Van Horn, Tim Corbin, Kevin O'Sullivan? I'm sure they were all happy or surprised to see you're back in the conference.
Well, you'd be surprised. I only heard from 2 of them. Everybody was busy. Some of them were in the World Series and so forth. But, I get along with just about everybody in this conference, and I think there's always been a lot of mutual respect. And I'm looking forward to locking horns with all of them again. Dave Van Horn did reach out to me, and, we talked about some of the great games we had between LSU and Arkansas. We've had great games, from when I was coaching at LSU with most everybody. So I'm really looking forward to the competition again. And I feel like I'm kind of reborn. I said I feel like I'm 40 years old again, and I'm so enthused about everything. It's been long days and it's been a grind, but what's waiting out there in the spring and how tough the competition is. So you're not worried about it. You want to work hard to make sure your team is as good as we possibly can be.
Yeah, you beat a lot of these guys head-to-head too, so maybe they're not happy that you're back in the SEC, so we'll see what happens. Coach, best of luck to you. I mean, I still remember reading your dad's book, The Mainieri Factor, so many years ago, and all those great stories he told about becoming a successful head coach. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what you do there, and it's going to be real fun to see what you do there at South Carolina, and we appreciate you taking some time with us.
Oh, Chris, thank you. Thanks for mentioning my dad and his book as well. And thank you for the time you gave me. It's great to catch up with you.
Absolutely, Coach. Thanks again.
Okay.
That's Coach Paul Mainieri, their head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. And, of course, very successful coach in the SEC, long time at LSU, and appreciate him taking some time out. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for taking some time to watch us and check us out. Remember to subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and, of course, the audio version on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And thank you for making us your first listen every day. Now you can make your second listen. Check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and the Amazon Free Fire TV channels app. Search Locked On Sports Today, all the biggest sports stories in the world of sports, talking about it right there. Locked On Sports Today. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys later on this week.